Christopher Nolan has dropped his first official trailer for The Odyssey. The Odyssey is one of my most anticipated movies of 2026. So, does this trailer work? Did it boost my excitement? Did it detract from it? Let's talk about it. It's a cool shot.
After years of war, no one could stand between my men.
Matt Damon's ripped, like stocky.
And home. Not even me.
Promise me you will come back.
What if I can't?
Well, I have chills, so to me that says this trailer is doing something right. All right, so let's dissect this a little bit from a filmmaking and technique standpoint. First thing I want to point out in this trailer, is just the cinematography of it, right? This thing looks gorgeous. Obviously, The Odyssey is a big, epic story, and you get that with the big, sweeping landscape shots that just look stunning. One of my favorite shots of this trailer is this shot here of the Trojan Horse being lifted out of the water. And not only did you have this beautiful widescreen, but you could just see how every portion of the frame is being utilized. And so Christopher Nolan clearly shot this film to be seen on the biggest possible screen, where you can really look at every corner and take in the beauty, take in the detail, and take in something that's happening. So it just looks epic and looks massive. But on the flip side of that, you also have these like intimate close-ups, right? Where you have, for example, this shot here of Matt Damon, Odysseus, this close-up shot of his face where you just have this dark background, but his face is perfectly halfly lit with this quite subtle firelight. This feels intimate. And so there's something about the juxtaposition between the big grand scale and these intimate character moments that to me tell me that not only are we getting an epic story and an epic adventure, and you have to go to the theater to see this thing, which is something that Christopher Nolan is a big proponent of, obviously, but not only are you getting that, but you're also going to get a real character study. This is about Odysseus and his journey and his internal struggles. And I think these shots perfectly represent that. But outside of that, for example, when looking at this shot, what strikes me is that the lighting feels very naturalistic. It doesn't feel hyper stylized. So that's also a really interesting juxtaposition of like this massive story that has fantastical and mythological elements, but shot in a way that's really grounded and really real. It tells me that as a viewer, we're really going to be transported to this place at this point in time. And we're not going to feel separated from it. We're really going to feel immersed in it. And that to me is really exciting. Now on this channel, because my profession is editing, I love to talk about the editing of something. So how is the editing of this trailer? Well, what jumps out to me, quite honestly, the editing is quite subtle. Once again, creating this sense of realism. Editing, the thing about it, especially in trailers, like a lot of editors tend to edit trailers in a very stylized way and to really make it pop. But here, it doesn't feel like there was really much of an attempt to do that. They're not trying to hook you with the edit, these fast cuts. They really just want you to watch the thing and take in the scenery. And in order to take in the scenery, it needs to be a slower paced edit. The editing does fittingly ramp up towards the end once you see these shots of Odysseus and his men in the storm. The editing is more aggressive. The score has really picked up. It's crescendoing. We're getting this nice rise of energy, and I think that rise of energy perfectly mirrors the intensity of the storm moment. But outside of that, the editing is all pretty steady. They do have an editing technique here that they use in a bunch of trailers, but it's always effective when you see it. And it's after this storm moment. After the storm moment, you'll see it cuts to black. So it cuts to black on this shot of Odysseus, like really rowing, using every possible fiber of his energy that he has, trying to protect and save his men. And then it cuts to black right at that moment. When it does that, to me, it just accentuates the struggle that these men are encountering in this moment. That edit there just, to me, heightens the fact that the conflict these characters are going to be experiencing are going to feel at times insurmountable. So it's a really heroic moment that I liked a lot about the trailer. And that cut to black is then punctuated by this moment where his wife, presumably Anne Hathaway, is saying, "Promise me you'll come back." And he goes, "What if I can't?"
Promise me you will come back.
What if I can't?
And that question of what if I can't, to me, hints at the character's self-doubt that he's going to be battling throughout this journey home. Like, he's not entirely sure if he can do it. And so the fact that this moment comes right after this shot of Odysseus just rowing with every fiber of his being, trying to protect his men, really highlights that this self-doubt that he feels in this moment is going to be something that he's going to feel throughout his journey home as he encounters all of these obstacles. So once again, reinforcing that this is going to be a character study. It's an epic visual feast, but it's also an epic emotional feast or emotional story. Continuing on this thread of this ending dialogue kind of revealing an internal conflict of Odysseus, what's also interesting about this trailer is that there is very little dialogue. There's only dialogue really at the beginning and at the end. So we just talked about the end. So now let's look at the beginning dialogue and what it tells us. Because the dialogue here, obviously, when there's very little dialogue in a trailer, it's always very carefully chosen. So let's listen to the lines that they've chosen and see what it tells us about the story that we're going to be experiencing.
After years of war, no one could stand between my men and home. Not even me.
So what does this tell us? Well, first and foremost, it tells us Odysseus's drive in the movie, the goal. The goal is kind of twofold, is get home, first and foremost. After being away, years of war with his men, he now wants to go home. And in the process, he also wants to protect his men. And that's revealed in the line, "No one could stand between my men." We're unified, and we're all going to get home together. But then there's this other really interesting line, which is, "Not even me." So after years of war, no one could stand between my men and home, not even me. So the fact that he says, "not even me," reveals that there is an internal struggle there. I talked about before how the last line showed an internal struggle of his self-doubt. I think there's another internal struggle at play, and that is that the character Odysseus is kind of torn between his warrior persona, but also his deep desire for peace and home. And so home kind of represents peace, but the years of war that he was in represents his the soldier in him, the warrior in him. And I feel like those two parts of his personality are going to be at odds in this film. On the one hand, he really deeply wants to go home. He wants peace after years of war, but then being a warrior is who he is, and he naturally seeks adventure, and that's potentially going to be an obstacle to him going home. And we know in the story of the Odyssey, that very much comes into play in his journey, right? Where you have like the temptations with like the sirens and all of that are going to be toying with him and really challenging and testing his desire to get home. So I think just those few opening lines reveal not only the main story, but they also reveal the main internal conflict of the protagonist. And I also think that tug between his warrior personality, his desire for adventure, and his desire for peace is also beautifully symbolized in this opening shot. So it's this beautiful panning shot across the desert. It's clearly the aftermath of the war, and you see all of these warrior burials. Even though it's a very sinister shot, there is something peaceful about it. It's slow moving. The landscape is beautiful. The sun is very gentle. There is a calmness to this shot. So this calmness mixed in with this violent symbolic imagery of the dead soldiers is kind of potentially a metaphor or visual metaphor for this contrast between the character's warrior personality and his quest for peace. And this internal conflict, to me, is also shown in the fact that this trailer juxtaposes light and dark a lot. For example, you see that here, where you have this beautiful, big, sweeping shot of his home with Tom Holland, his son, and Anne Hathaway, his wife. And that's beautiful. It's bright. It's got a sense of hopefulness to it. And then we immediately cut to this dark, moody shot of Odysseus with his men. And so that's a very stark contrast from the bright that we saw before. We also see that in the shot of the Trojan Horse being lifted out of the water. You go from this to these really darkly lit shots of the characters inside the horse. You have it again at 1:15, right? This big, beautiful, wide, bright shot of the soldiers running towards the water. The greens really pop, the ocean really pops, and we cut from that, boom, to this really dark, foggy, somber image. And so this constant tugging between bright and dark, I think, is another visual cinematic metaphor for this internal struggle that the character feels. This is all my theory, obviously. I mean, I don't know if that was the intention, but I do think that the trailer is purposefully edited kind of that way, and it does at least give that feeling to me, that there is going to be this tug of war, right? This light and dark battle. So the other thing that jumped out to me about this trailer is that there's obviously going to be the fantastical elements represented in this film. I mean, you have this really cool shot of the Cyclops peering into the cave. At least I believe it's a Cyclops. I'm pretty sure it is. Could be wrong, but I'm going to go with that. And, you know, once again, going back to my point about the cinematography, how everything looks really real, it just looks so realistic. If a giant Cyclops were to enter a cave and you were to snap a picture of it, this is probably what you would get. This is what it would look like. So I don't know how he did it. I don't know if it's CGI, practical effects, animatronics, a mix of everything. It's probably is CGI, but it's so well done. And it's just emblematic of Christopher Nolan's deep desire for wanting to bring the best possible viewer experience he can. Like his care, his attention to detail, and his super high bar for excellence really comes through in this trailer. And it once again just confirms that even though this is a big, mythological, fantastical story, it's going to be told in the most grounded and realistic way possible. So this is just another element that's really making me excited for this movie and really making me feel like I'm just going to be transported to this world and really fully immersed into it. The other thing I wanted to point out about this trailer, and it's something that I've noticed about other Christopher Nolan trailers, he uses the same font or a very similar font in many of his trailers. And it immediately creates this brand recognition. Like when you see this font, you immediately think, at least for me, I immediately think of Christopher Nolan. And it's like, oh yes, this is Christopher Nolan's version of the Odyssey. It just feels very him. So the Nolan of it all is very present in this trailer. And the final thing I'm going to say that I was excited about this trailer is the music. And there's this really cool texture that the music has. I mean, take a look at this section here.
No one could stand between my men.
It's like a drone sound, but then there's like a little treble to it. It's like a metallic, it's hard to describe. It's like a metallic rattling to the music. It feels quite godlike. It feels like something imposing, vibrating over this world. And you really hear that really nicely at the very end over the title card, The Odyssey. Listen to what we hear.
What if I can't?
There's that godlike vocal, that like chant, that like, oh, and it has that rattling inside of it. And so I feel like the rattling, it's like a dark energy. Gods are angry. That's kind of the impression I get here. And it's a really cool sound. And so the music and the sound design of this, I think, is really quite effective. And also the dialogue in the trailer sounds so good. It sounds so crisp. Christopher Nolan has sometimes gotten some flack for the dialogue or the sound mix doesn't sound super clear in his movies. At least as far as the trailer here is concerned, I think the sound mixing of this trailer is spot on and perfect. And if this is indicative of what the sound mix of the movie is going to be like, we're in for not only a visual treat, but an auditory treat. So overall, I'm just really excited to see this film in theaters next year. It's definitely one that you're going to have to see in theaters. That's what this trailer really makes you feel. And as a result, I thought it was a very effective trailer. I've seen some chatter online with people saying that they didn't love the trailer. They thought it was quote unquote mid. Some people loved it, didn't work for others. And I can totally get that. I think what might not be resonating for some people is what I was saying about the editing. The editing is a lot more subtle. It's not flashy. It's not trying to push anything. It's just trying to give you a little taste of the imagery and what's in store for you. Whereas if you have a trailer that's really like excitingly edited, it's quick, it's fast paced, lots of really great snippets of dialogue, that sometimes gets your heart pumping a little bit more and gets you more of those goosebumps and really makes you feel more excited to see something. So that's why it might not be working for some people, because it is a pretty discreet trailer. But what I get really excited about is what the trailer promises. This big epic scope of a story with these beautiful sweeping landscape shots mixed with this deep internal story that deals with a lot of internal struggles and this internal battle, this very heroic story where he's going to have to overcome his own demons and overcome external obstacles. So there's just a very satisfying story that I think is going to be told, and it's going to be told in the most beautiful, realistic way possible. And that's what gets me really stoked. So anyway, those are my thoughts on the trailer. Did you see the Odyssey trailer? What did you think of it? Let me know in the comments down below. Is there anything I missed? Please let me know. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Please consider subscribing if you want more of this type of content. And as always, I'll see you in the next video.